Welcome. This is David Bowles' Human Meme. Today's topic, Pandemic Palisade. In the city in which I live, there's a long street in town called Palisade Avenue, and that street is wide and beautiful and tree-lined. And you can watch the city landscape change from row house to business offices, to single-family homes, to silk and mirror skyscrapers. Originally, a palisade, in antiquity, the old days, was a wooden fence made out of stakes impaled into the ground. A palisade wasn't for show or pleasure. It was actually an enclosure, a defense against all intruders. And so today, a palisade, and its fusillade of meanings in the context of an ongoing COVID pandemic, asks us directly to search for and to allow to be taken away by the contextual contradiction in terms between the beautiful parkway and the staked wooden fence defense. For now, social distancing, virtual staked fencing, is working. We are on lockdown. Know it or not, like it or not. But if this social separation continues year to year, after and after, will we still be willing to be voluntarily locked down? Americans will try things once for the good of the community, but they rarely make a habit of actually doing that 2 times in a row. Well, my human meme friend, this week we are still caught in the maw of the coronavirus outbreak, and things are looking bleak even as the sun shines upon our glorious faces. We know what's coming for us, and yet we still cannot avoid it, and so we wait for the inevitable to arrive upon us to take us down. The streets are empty. People are trying to stay away from each other. We breathe, and we wonder where our droplets of life land upon others. We are limited in this building to 3 people in an elevator, and even that's 2 people too many. Public spaces are closed, even in private buildings. Our students are now online, and we happily meet them virtually and enthusiastically. Every encounter confirms the distancing and the loss of friendship and intellectual intimacy. Oh, sure, you can teach well online, but once you start the learning process, live and in person, the heat of each other in the same room, well, you do tend to feel the coldness of the video monitor and the panopticonic eye of the camera staring back at you listlessly. And yet, you take it on, because that's what we're doing now. And we are obligated to feel for the students who have been tossed out of their New York City dorms by NYU and Columbia and others. Some students have retreated home, some to home countries with a 12-hour difference. So a 2 p.m. New York City course is now held online at 2 a.m. in Hong Kong and Singapore. That's an impossible new texture to comprehend. And since those students are arriving back home in their countries, arriving back from the filthy and unsafe United States of America with the terrible healthcare system and the most coronavirus outbreak cases in the world, well, those students are quarantined for 14 days upon their arrival home. Yes, stuck at home. All because of their New York City schooling. stuck with no computer and no internet. That's what a $75,000 a year in tuition buys you from New York. And all this whinging reminds me of my new favorite cartoon. Two people are shaking hands. One person says, "Hi, I'm from New York." And the other person smiles back, still holding hands and shaking, and cutting off her own arm with a hacksaw. So, are we there yet? Oh, yes. We're just now entering the realm of the famous and the friendly dying because of coronavirus. We scan headlines to see the latest who have fallen to COVID-19. It somewhat comforts us that none of those people are untouchable, while terrifying us that the virus picks no favorite for escape. We stand up just to sit down again. Yes, we are there yet. And my human meme friend, you know I am not a doctor. I don't know anything. I don't make any recommendations. But I will share with you this insight from an epidemiologist friend of mine who was just wondering aloud with me about COVID-19. He happened to tell me it is particularly sort of odd and fascinating that, generally speaking, children, don't seem to get as affected by the coronavirus as the elderly. And my friend went on to suggest that perhaps that is because of the inexperienced immune system of kids. Coronavirus hits them and their bodies don't react with inflammation because their bodies have not yet been coded how to respond to that particular virus. So they just sort of slough it off and forget about it. While on the other hand, older people have an exposed and finely tuned mature immune system. And when coronavirus hits them, their bodies go into frenetic overdrive. Their bodies internally scream, "I know I'm being invaded. I know what this is. I know I've seen this before." And their body's immune system leaps into overdrive only to discover too late that, no, wait a minute, time out, no. This COVID-19 is not something I've seen before. And their bodies get worn out trying to figure out how to battle the coronavirus. And their immune system, working so hard to figure out what was happening, and it just gives up, exhausted. And that's when the lungs start to fill and the ventilators start to rise. 80% is the most interesting coronavirus number. 80% of the population will get COVID-19, and that 80% will recover just fine without a ventilator or hospitalization intervention. But 80% of the coronavirus infected who happen to be on ventilators will not come off the ventilators. Those 80% on ventilators will die, so be wary. And if you can, always try to know and to predict which side of the 80% you stand. I have a lovely friend, Katha. I have known her for many years. She used to write with me at Go Inside magazine, and she writes with me on David Bowles' blogs. And she currently lives in India. Katha wrote to me this week to make sure we were okay and safe. And I share my reply to her with you now. Hi, Katha. Wonderful to hear from you. I saw India is in total lockdown for 3 weeks. That's the smart way to handle an outbreak like this. Are you in a good, safe place? We are fine here. Jana is working her New York State job from home, and all NYU teaching is now forced online via Zoom. Not great, but so far no layoffs, furloughs, or firings for us yet. We've been on a self-imposed lockdown for about 3 weeks now, but they're saying New York City is going to peak in the next 6 weeks, so the absolute worst is yet to come. One hospital in Queens has a 6-hour queue outside the emergency room for people who believe they are sick with the coronavirus, but only the sickest will be allowed a test. All the others will be sent home on watch. The federal government's decision-making so far is incomprehensible. These elected people who hate big government and served to destroy it for the last 3 years have found absolute success in tearing down all the emergency systems we have in place to flatten an outbreak like COVID-19. It's a sad and scary time. My friend Katha replied and told me she was safe, but she was also concerned about India and its compressing body of humanity in society. And she said she was worried about the vibrance of the state, health, and welfare system. Katha knows things need to be cleaned to avoid coronavirus contamination, and she was concerned her big city would not be able to keep up with the virus in all public places. And Katha wondered, what would be on the other side of the tunnel? Katha closed with this question for me and for you. How do you fight an enemy you cannot see? Here was my response. Hi, Katha. I'm glad you are safe. Yes, the health experts are now saying, based on data estimates, that April 7 is going to be the worst day for deaths in New York City. The mayor said April will be worse than March, and May will be worse than April. So we're going into the teeth of it soon. We are to expect a 50% infection rate in New York City. That's 4.3 million people. Dr. Fauci is our national expert. He says that based on trends happening in Africa, where the virus is now beginning to spread, that this is going to be a seasonal event. We're only in wave 1 of this. Wave 2 will happen again in a year. Right now, people are pretty much scared and obeying. Will that change in a year? The year after that? Dr. Fauci told us the soonest we can expect a vaccine is maybe spring 2021, but most likely summer 2021. And they don't know exactly when because they must get the vaccine exactly right. The virus doesn't seem to be changing much now, so the experts say that's a good thing. We can knock it down with one vaccine that won't have to change over time. Since this is a virus, Dr. Fauci also said there's a good chance that once you get COVID-19 and survive, you'll be immune from getting it again for a while. He said that's how every virus so far has always worked. Locking down and social distancing works. New York State has been locked down for 2 weeks, and yesterday, for the first time, the rate of infection fell. So staying away from each other is effective, but unsustainable, I think, for long periods of time in a mixed market economy. The second we start coming out of our shelter, Dr. Fauci warns us, we will immediately start seeing a new rise in infections. It's going to be unavoidable. If it gets out of hand, we may need to shelter all over again. I fear for the small business. Who is going to want to sit in a restaurant in the next year? Sure, we'll pack into trains because we must. But if it's safer to make a sandwich at home than to sit down in a restaurant with 60 other people you don't know, who is going to do that? It would not be safe. The other side of the tunnel is dark now. It would be brighter in the USA if we had better leadership at the top, because science and technology is going to save us, not politics. But it is politics that sets the factor of fear and the goals of the nation, and that scares me more than anything. Stay in touch, but don't touch anybody. Be well, my friend. thank you for listening. Be a human meme.